welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rutherford. It is Friday, June 30th, the start of the holiday weekend. We are here live. It is a free-for-all today. I do have kind of a theme. Today is trucking, technology, and efficiency, but we're going to make it a Friday free-for-all as well. So schedule today, first hour here on the app live, and then we will jump on over to Twitter. If you're listening on the app, you can just keep listening, but you might want to consider joining us on the Twitter space itself today. I'm making a special offer. Oh, and Joel will not be able to make it with us today. I believe Henry will probably be joining me on Spaces. And the beauty of Spaces, anybody else who wants to join me and jump in and as a speaker can. But my offer for today, let me say this first. What is the real reason why we focus on efficiency? Because that's today's show, Trucking, Technology, and Efficiency. The real reason we focus on efficiency is not just to get better fuel economy. If we did, we might even use different strategies than what we're doing. We're really focusing on profit. The more efficient we operate, the more profit we can generate. But many times, almost most times, we may have to invest money to be more efficient. So we want to make sure there's a return on that investment. There are things we could do that would improve fuel economy, but would not improve profit. So the real goal to efficiency is profit. So that's today's theme, profit. That's the point of what we do in business. That is the ultimate point to what we do in profit in business is to generate a profit. And it seems to me like the more profit we generate, the better. The first thing we have to do is measure that. That's what we talk about, having your numbers, doing your accounting. That's what we're talking about is do you know your profit? Can you measure your profit? And profit is the money left over after you pay all the expenses of the business. It's left over and you get to use it personally. So my offer for today, and this offer only applies in the Twitter space. There's a reason for that. I've made these same kinds of offers here on the show. I've done this many times. Haven't done it in a while. I'm kind of looking forward to it. Here's my offer. The first person in the Twitter space who comes on live and admits they don't have any numbers and they don't have any plan. And when I talk about a plan, I mean getting through the freight recession we're in. Everybody should look at this. Everybody should put their numbers together, realistically look at what the rates are, and then could you make it if these rates last for 18 to 24 months longer? It's a math problem. It really is. We can predict. If we put your numbers together and we look at the rates, we can predict whether or not you're going to be able to make it. And we can also create a plan so that you will make it. So my offer today, the first person that admits they either don't have any numbers or they don't have a plan or they don't know what to do, I will personally create the business report for you using our software. Now, you're going to send me receipts and settlements, and I don't care if they're all wadded up and stuffed in a bag. I'm going to take that data, your settlements, your receipts, whatever you've got, and I'm going to create a business report for you. It's going to show you revenue per mile, cost per mile, expenses as a percentage of revenue, profit. It's going to show everything we need to know to figure out if your business in its current state can survive an extended freight recession. And if not, then I'll start to help you personally. And this could go on for months. I'll stay involved as long as you're willing to work on this, and I'll help you with a plan. It's a pretty damn good offer. If I were to charge people for this service, and I used to, if I were to charge people for this service, it's pretty expensive. It's time consuming. If I have to do this, I've got to sit down and take my time and put in your numbers and create a plan. It would be thousands of dollars. Somebody's going to get this free today. Well, maybe somebody is. I guess if nobody steps up, maybe I'll get off easy. All right. What else do I have today? That's really, I could talk about numbers and the importance of having numbers, the power of having numbers. I posted an example of a business report, so we could talk about that. All right. Looks like we've got Henry in here this morning. Henry, good morning.
Good morning, Kevin.
What's on your mind today?
Oh, well, just what you're saying, efficiency, and I've been thinking about it for weeks now, and efficiency and career path.
Okay.
And the reason I say that, because of everything getting frozen, the longer, heavier combination vehicles, that's just a big subject to me. That talk about being green and tuning and all these other technologies, and pretty much they've ruled out the trailer hitch. Put two trailers behind one truck. You don't have to platoon. The other trailer will follow you.
Yeah, it. I don't know why the trucking industry has resisted so much. I really don't understand that.
It isn't the trucking industry; it's the railroads, and that's been going on since 1991. When that was frozen.
Yeah, I know that's a big part of it when it comes to changing laws, but it seems to me like from the driver's point of view, I get a lot of pushback on this. They don't want bigger, heavier trucks.
Well, and they need to do it as a career path. To me, one of the problems with the industry is when you get your Class A license, you can do anything day one.
Yeah, I know.
Probably the only limiting factor is the insurance companies.
Right. Or maybe just some companies' rules and regulations. But you're right. For the most part, there are no laws or regulations that would stop you from doing almost anything in trucking.
Because especially if you go towards safety and everything, and Joel was talking quite a bit about safety last week. I hate he can't join us this week. It's always fun. But I think the New York Thruway, I think it's twin 48s. But from what I gather, you have to have 6 years of clean license to be qualified for it.
That might be.
If my earlier research from a number of years ago. So that gears it towards safety too. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that is correct. And that puts a nod towards the safety aspect as well. And then those drivers are worth more than your rank and file driver, because you attained a goal.
Exactly. Yeah, and you're right. We have no career path. We don't really, in this industry, we really do not put much value on experience.
And it's very green, with all this, save the planet stuff, which is great. But I'm like, are we really serious about saving the planet when you look at what we're doing?
No.
Probably not.
No, we're not serious about it at all.
Most cars have nearly 300 horsepower. We're running around with a single trailer on interstates that could easily support twins. We're not serious about it.
No, we're really not. Because the green agenda really isn't about saving the planet. It's about controlling people. So if they really wanted to save the planet, if we really thought that engine exhaust was harming the planet, and I won't argue whether it does or not. I think it does. It's not natural, but we're not going to stop. So the biggest impact we could make on the climate immediately would be a big industry push for the things we talk about on the show. Stuff that would work instantly.
Absolutely.
If we have a driver right now listening to the show and he's driving down the road at 75 miles an hour because that's just what he's always done. That's what and we're talking an owner operator now. That's kind of always been his mindset, because that's the mindset in this industry. More miles, more miles, more miles. I got to drive fast, right? If he's listening and he slows down, we immediately made an improvement. That's all it takes, but yet we hardly ever talk about that kind of stuff. You and I, that's all we ever talk about. But as an industry, it's shocking to me how little we focus on efficiency.
Well, yeah, and you get the naysayers when you start talking about the twin trailers and all. Well, it's not going to pay twice as much.
Of course
it's not. It doesn't cost twice as much.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, if you look at, I've always kind of used the airline industry as an example. I have to change what I say, though. It used to be that brand new commercial pilots, and these are the guys that get the tiny little puddle jumpers first. This is kind of what we're talking about with equipment and a career path. And it wasn't that long ago, those guys were getting paid less than $30,000 a year. It was like $26,000 was the average first year for a commercial pilot. But the difference is they can work their way up through equipment to bigger and bigger planes, and they get paid more and more. And when you become a jumbo pilot, you're doing pretty damn well on the pay scale. Now, from what I understand,
the same way with ships.
Yeah, you're right. Everything on the water is that, and trains and almost every other form of transportation has a pretty clear career path. And we don't.
We don't.
Nope, we don't. You're right. We don't. Let's get to some phone calls. Let's get started in Nebraska today. Paul, welcome to the program.
Hey, Kevin. Thanks for having me. I got my first oil sample back as a baseline, and I just wanted to kind of go over it with you since it's my first one.
Sure. Let's take a look at it. So let's set this up. We've got a Volvo. I'm going to assume it's a Volvo engine because I'm not seeing. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. What year?
Yes, sir. 2020.
TC?
None. VGT.
VGT. Okay. And we had 40,000 miles on the oil when you took the sample and 319,000 miles on the engine, right?
Correct.
Okay. Are you using the catalyst?
Yes, that's why I wasn't worried about that. I've listened enough that I ignored that.
Yeah, if you weren't using the catalyst, we would be concerned about the iron. Because you are using the catalyst, we're not concerned. And there is another clue here. I could have predicted that you were using it because iron is what we would consider high, but all the other wear metals are really low. So we know there isn't some, dirt or foreign substance in the oil causing wear metals because they would all wear then. And it's not. It's just iron. So that's good. Your silicon is under 10. We're fine there. You can ignore that yellow under boron. It means absolutely nothing.
I was wondering on that one.
Absolutely nothing. Just completely ignore it like it doesn't exist. Fuel dilution at 1.9, which is virtually zero. Soot at 0.5, which is showing we have a nice clean burn. The base is low. That's not really that big of an issue. We can just add base. Now, sometimes we look at base being depleted too fast and think that's a combustion problem, but I don't think it is. There's no fuel dilution, your soot's low, so I just think it's one of these trucks that may use base a little faster. But when we extend our drains and they keep putting less and less base in these oils, because the newer engines shouldn't need as much. And I think we're still trying to tweak that. So if you plan on continuing to run this oil, and I would highly recommend you do because it's very serviceable oil, I would get the Hot Shot Secret base additive and just put some base in this.
Yeah, I jumped the gun and I already went ahead and changed it.
Oh,
because it was my first sample and I wanted a baseline and everything.
Yeah, okay. You probably could have sold that oil as new. It's so clean.
I had a feeling, and then I get my coworkers going, "You went 40,000?"
Oh yeah, 40,000 is nothing on this truck. I can tell you right now, based on that sample, this truck will go 75 or 80 with no problem.
Okay, so yeah, I already planned on extending it even more on this next one. It was my first one. I wanted to, I don't know, I guess be safer. I don't know.
Look, the first truck that I ever put a bypass filter on, it was a 1995 Ford Aeromax with the Ford did not have the 11 liter. That was the first time I had to buy a 12 liter, the 12.7. And I was determined I was not going to change the oil till the sample told me. But this is my first experience with this. And this is back when we were changing oil at 10,000 miles for most trucks. People that were extending out to 15 were kind of considered radical. And I went 250,000 miles before I did my first sample or my first change. I was sampling that whole time. And I didn't need to. I just kind of freaked out. It had been in almost 2 years, and it's 250,000 miles. And I thought, well, maybe I should just change it now. The next time the oil got changed on that truck was an accident. We were at about 200,000 miles on the next round, and it was in the shop.
I remember hearing that story.
They had a new mechanic, and, my shop knew what my service was supposed to be. They knew what to change and what not to change. Somebody didn't tell the new guy, and he changed the oil. And, what are you going to do? It's already changed. But, yeah, people were just losing their mind over that back then because this is 1995. That truck went to 1.3 million miles, and I traded it in. Never had a single engine problem.
Kevin?
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I remember back then there was still people that were rolling bearings in an engine at 250 as a matter and I look at my truck that I'm driving now. I'm at 200,000. At 250,000, I'm going to be at my third. Just factory recommended oil change. We're not even extending anything. That's right. What it is.
Yeah. Yeah. There is nothing weird anymore about 50, 60, 70,000 mile oil changes without an aftermarket filter because the OEMs are now putting bypass filtration on these engines. So all of those people back in 1995 and every year after that said, that's bullshit. If it worked, the OEMs would just put it on the truck. There is some truth to that. It just took them about 2 decades to get around to it.
I do have a question. Joel's not here for the Volvo side. I know it calls, as long as it has the VDF 4.5, I can use it. I have been using T5 10W30. If I decided to go up to that T6, I think I saw a 5W40. What differences does it make?
So I don't think it actually makes any sense to move from a 530 blend or a 1030 blend to a 540 full synthetic. And here's why. We would go to the full synthetic to increase fuel economy by reducing some drag in that oil on all the parts in the engine. But you're going from a blend to a full synthetic, which is a step up. You're going from a 30 weight to a 40 weight, which is a step down. So it's probably just going to cancel each other out. The gains will be offset by the loss in going to the 40 weight. And I wouldn't do it because these engines really are optimized for 30 weight oil. So you would, if you wanted to go to a full synthetic, you would want to find a 30 weight full synthetic.
Okay.
All that would help them with,
Well, that's
Kevin,
okay.
is cold weather startability with the 5. That's all it would do.
Right. And it's the cold weather startability on a 1030 synthetic blend is, at 20 below, you can't notice any real drag from the oil.
No.
Does that make
Okay,
sense,
and,
Paul?
I'm looking into the OPS system, and if I were to grab that, I think I heard on here multiple times you sample at 25,000 and only change the OPS filter, right?
Correct.
And then at the next interval is when you do the engine filters and that.
Yep, exactly. And then change the oil when the sample tells us. I never have a schedule for when I change the oil. I have a schedule for when I sample and when I change each filter, but the oil is always changed based on the condition of the sample.
Okay, because that is pretty much the last thing I'm wanting to look into other than an electric APU. I got my flow below, I got my air dog, I got my fleet air filter.
Nice.
And that's just what's next on my list.
There you go. Good stuff. All right, good sample. I'm glad you're on a sample program. Let's go to Alabama. Matt, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
What's on your mind today?
I completely agree with.
I probably should have warned you or asked you first, but I know you would be okay with it. I posted your numbers on Twitter today.
No, yeah. Yeah, I told you in the past, and I've told Aaron, I put my stuff out there. You guys are more than welcome to use it as examples for anything. It's
yeah, and by the way,
no problem with me at all.
Congratulations. You're having a hell of a 23.
Yep. And that's not 6 months, by the way. That's only 5.
After I posted it, I realized that it couldn't have been 6 because we're not done with June yet.
Yeah, you got to wait till either Sunday or Monday when I get home and do paperwork.
Yeah, I know your numbers and I know your operation, and I have to say, when I went in there to pull the numbers, I was surprised. I did not expect them to still be that strong.
And I think I need to start editing something because I started doing something this year. I'm becoming one of these illegal double brokering guys.
Okay.
There's only one load in the first 5 months where somebody else took my trailer and did my round under his own authority.
Okay.
So, and I don't have broker authority, so, it's illegal. But it is what it is for now. I'm going to figure something out.
Right.
But that's, for you, when you look at my payroll, I'm putting what I pay them as payroll. I think I need to just get those numbers out of there because it's screwing up my my gross revenue.
Right. I looked at that when I saw a number under wages, and I know how you do yours. I thought, I wonder what's going on there. That seems a little odd. Now it makes sense.
But yeah, Henry and I think a lot alike, I believe, and for probably very, very long time before meeting each other. I've always thought about pulling double 53-footers down the road just to see how long I'd get away with it.
Not probably very long.
Well, this was years ago, and thought about running at night in the dark and running with another guy anytime we, when scales are closed and the cop's in the middle, he comes up alongside of me so they can't see that it's one truck or, yeah, I don't have a trailer set up for it, but
I guess instead of a
turnpike,
instead of a converter dolly, how about if you got a second truck that didn't have an engine or anything in it and just put a tow bar to the other trailer? It looked like 2 trucks going down the road.
Yeah. And half the trucks on the road are tailgating that close anyway, so it really wouldn't look.
There you go.
But yeah, I completely agree too that this shouldn't be a wide open thing. You got to have requirements in order to get the license to do it. And, it's like you said, a career path. You start out doing one thing, and after time and safety and experience, you can move up to something bigger. And I can't see any reason why we shouldn't do it.
The other thing we've talked about a little bit, and I think could also create a little bit more of a career path, is truckload carriers figuring out how to create more either dedicated freight or lanes that get drivers home pretty regular. And that should also be reserved for the better drivers with better records and longer history. And every time I mention, truckload over-the-road freight, using relays and that kind of stuff. It's too complicated. We can't do that. This load does. I know it doesn't work on every load. This black and white thinking makes me crazy. Every time you come up with an idea, all people want to do is go, but it doesn't work in my operation. That will never. Okay, then don't do it in your operation. My God, if I can only use ideas or talk about ideas that work in everybody's operation, I'd turn off my show right now and never go on the air again. Because that's not how this works. There wouldn't be
much to talk about.
There'd be nothing to talk about. Now, maybe we could come on every day and say, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, because that's all that works in every operation. And honestly, that isn't even true. There are operations where the revenue side doesn't make sense to slow down. So, you're right.
That might make sense for fuel economy, but not necessarily profit.
Not necessarily profit, right. So, yes, lots of ideas we bring up, maybe even be very niche ideas where it's only going to be able to use a small part of the time. But if it works and it makes sense and it's efficient, why not do it that little bit of the time?
Well, and that's
exactly, Kevin. You look at my operation right now. I've been, for the last 3 months, turning 3,840 to 3,880 miles a week.
Wow.
But I've had to run, right? But today I'm far enough ahead that I'm limiting myself to running slow at 65. I'm not doing the 75 in Texas where I can.
Right. Yeah, business, all of this stuff is really a game of nuance. It's not so black and white. And that's where people get into that mindset that nothing works or nothing matters. It's almost like no matter what you bring up, well, that doesn't work in my operation. Well, that only works a little bit of the time. Right. But if you can take 10 strategies that all work a little bit of the time, then you get to numbers like you two put out all the time.
That's right.
Yep. And that's when people look at my numbers and people that come to the CMC and the newbies, their first question is always, well, what's the one thing that makes the biggest difference?
Or, well, what kind of freight do you pull? It doesn't matter. I don't care. Haul garbage. I used to make quite a bit of money hauling garbage off the East Coast. You can haul just about anything and make money.
Well, here's the other one on all that you hear all the time. But how does it do uphill? And I'm like, who spends all their time going uphill? Most of the country's flat, and where it's not flat, half of it's downhill.
Yeah.
So,
I know. I think
who cares?
The statistic is from, they checked a couple different routes from the East Coast to the West Coast, but the statistic is no matter which route you take, 90% plus of that time you're traveling across the country, you're either level or downhill. There's just not that much uphill.
Exactly. And when I get called into the fleets to do driver training and stuff, but when they're having a problem, they're always telling me about one hill.
I know.
And I'm like, do you all just stay on that hill? I'm going away from here. There's going to be a traffic jam on that hill.
Yeah, I know. I don't get it. But that's That's kind of the thinking that we have to try to get through, that black and white thinking, because all of this stuff is really nuanced.
Yeah, well, I might agree with that. There's some stretch of the road where it's just a hill, and I'm kind of on that right now. I'm on I-22 in northern Alabama, left Birmingham, and I'm headed towards Mississippi. I don't think there's 2 miles of flat stretch of road here. You're either going up or down.
Right, but the other difference on a stretch like that, most of the time, we're not talking about hills that even cause you to drop a gear.
Yeah.
It's just a climb, and I get that.
And you got to go back down.
Right. It's
eventually.
And we teach people how to kind of use the roller coaster concept through those kind of terrains, where you use your momentum to help you up the other side.
Yeah. Yeah, this is
Or
a
now
stretch of road where
you have it reads the road ahead and does it for you, which is really nice.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. All right, Matt, we're going to cut you loose. I got to watch my time today. We do have time for more calls. I will let you know. But in about 30 minutes, we'll be switching over to Twitter. So jump in, 855-950-3835. Let's go to Colorado. Brad, welcome to the program.
Well, good morning, Kevin.
Good morning. What's on your mind today?
I'm looking at changing up my routes and looking at a different piece of equipment, and just kind of curious on about what years did they finally figure out their emission stuff. I've noticed that truck prices are dropping quite a bit, especially in the 2010 to 2017 range. I guess all the flip-floppers are going broke pulling Amazon and not doing anything else. So a lot of trucks are coming on the market right now.
They are. The prices are dropping like crazy. There was another report out yesterday that prices had dropped fairly significantly again. I say all the time, I try not to make a lot of predictions because I hate being wrong. I nailed this one. I was telling people a year ago, do not buy a truck. Absolutely don't even think about buying a truck. These prices will come down. I even had the timing pretty darn close, too. So I do get a win once in a while on that. Emissions for me.
Well, that's why I'm in.
I'll just give you.
That's why I'm in it.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say that's why I'm in a 99 Mac that's kind of slow because it was a good price and I wasn't going to go anything newer 2 years ago.
Exactly. Great choice.
Because of the prices.
Yeah, and here's the thing. There were people that really needed to buy during that time. Sometimes it just sucks. You get in that cycle. Now, owner-operators sometimes have a lot of flexibility, but things can happen. I mean, you can total a truck. It gets stolen. I mean, and you got to do something. So I was trying to tell people the strategy to use when you're in that position and you have to buy in such a lousy market like we were in, cheap. That's the only way to get, not get screwed to the people that were going out and buying new trucks at those prices, just insanity. $240,000 for an 18-month-old truck with 300,000 miles on it? You got to be kidding me. And I was watching people buy those trucks. So the way to get through that was just buy the cheapest truck you could get away with and then wait till the market adjusted like it is now. So you made a good choice. For me, emissions, I would probably just, overall in the market, I would stay away from anything earlier than 2014, unless I was going all the way back to, say, 2003 and older. I would skip it. This kind of helps remember it because it's easy. It's a full decade from like 04 to 14. I just kind of ignore that group of trucks. Henry, what do you feel like was the real year with the DD series that we've really kind of gotten past the emission issues? What year was that in your opinion?
10 there was about not much. 12 and newer,
Okay.
you're pretty darn good.
Yeah, and you're right.
Okay.
It probably was 12. I used the 4 to 14 because that 10, that really round 10 number. But yeah, you could find a 12 or a 13 and do really well too.
And I'm thinking about it by brand. The two, and I remember reading an article on it too. The two that had the least emissions problems were, Volvo, which Joel's not with us today, and the Detroit, and it was both of them that had pretty heavy European connections that just did not have the problems. But they had to go through some of that stuff earlier across the pond, so
Yep.
that cut the learning curve down quite a bit.
Okay. The operation that I'm going to be doing will be about 30% idling, unloading for a pneumatic bulk tank. And then the rest of the year is flatbed.
Okay.
So
That's why I was a little concerned about the idling portion and the emission stuff.
When,
they still don't like that, and it's not a good thing. But one of the things that, especially when you're looking at the truck, if you're looking at the engine reports that got brought up to me by somebody else, it was their idea. They don't just look at the miles, they don't just look at the hours, but they look at how many actual gallons of fuel the truck burned, which is the real measure of how much work it did, and to think of that in your equation.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I had run across a few trucks, some of the earlier ISXs, the CM870 and 871. But I hear the long silence in the background there, so.
Yeah. I say 2014, we say 2012. If I'm looking to really optimize things and I have the budget, the newer for me now, the better. I mean, we're really back now to the point where, so if I go back to late 90s, early 2000s, I used to get so excited about speccing a new truck because of all the new things I had either learned or things that had changed since the last time I specced a truck. And for me, when I had, multiple trucks and I would space mine out, I was buying a truck every couple of years, and I would get really excited about speccing a new one. That all changed in 04. In 04, the last thing I wanted to do was go spec a new truck, so I stopped. It was either build gliders, buy older trucks. It was, now I'm back to that same thing. Every year, I'm more excited about helping people spec trucks because every year now things are getting better.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, so
because
now
I've been, I said this a little worried. There's a lot of guys that, well, I'll pick on Cummins, but the ISX, when that IMAP sensor, that $80 sensor would plug up, there were probably a lot of EGR coolers and $3,500 turbos that were sold because that $80 sensor was plugged up and didn't throw a code.
Kevin, and that's one of the things that really hurt the emissions trucks. There was two things going on. One, they were figuring out the emissions, but worse than that, a lot of the horror stories that I heard were because it was misdiagnosed to begin with.
Correct.
So that created a secondary problem, and some of them, it was terrible. That would have been fairly simple to fix if they knew where to go from the beginning.
Exactly.
The
interesting thing was, and I didn't realize this at first, I almost kind of felt sorry for a lot of the mechanics and technicians because they seemed so frustrated and they weren't really being effective and they weren't fixing much. But then I found out it really was their own fault. The OEMs, once I found like the troubleshooting trees that all the OEMs put out, they are really in-depth and accurate. Follow the troubleshooting tree, and you might actually figure out what's wrong.
You have to follow it, though.
Right, and you have to follow every step, and it is very specific. You do this, then you check this, then you take it for a ride with the laptop plugged in, and you do this, and you check this number, and if this happens, you do this. If this happens, do this. It's in depth. It's complicated. It is, but it works.
I know of a over $30,000. Well, it went well in excess of $30,000 problem. That was because somebody skipped one of those steps.
Yes. Yeah.
Ugh.
Exactly. And that just, like I said in the beginning, I kind of felt sorry for them until I figured out they were creating most of their own problems.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the reasons I had kind of thought about Cummins and ISX in the early 2000s, was the fact that I can buy a copy of Insight, get registered, and I can look at my truck and look at the different stuff, what the values are being registered. And I don't know if I can do that with a Volvo or a DD15.
Yeah, you can. There's software available.
Yeah.
You can?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, for the...
Well, the nice thing,
you know.
the one that doesn't get used enough that blows my mind with the Detroits, and everybody has it now, I believe, is the virtual technician. That
Right.
there's a lot of times it'll set off a check engine light that's going to go away, but you get an email that tells you worry about it now, or wait till the next service to worry about it. Or the best one is it's going to go away and just
Yeah.
continue on down the road and it disappears.
Yep.
Okay, didn't know that about the DD15 series. But yeah, right now with the 99 Mac, I'm pulling light loads. I'm averaging the IFTA, I think first quarter IFTA was 7.3. This one should be about 7.5. And then I hear you and Joel talking about 9 and 10 miles per gallon, and I keep thinking to myself, there's a lot left on the table that I can go after. So,
Yep. Absolutely.
You're done.
yeah, just didn't want to, like you said, the $30,000 emissions bill. Didn't want to get
And to
involved
me,
in
it's
that.
more
So,
important than ever to develop a relationship with a technician, but also be careful with the one you pick, because some of them were some of the worst enemies to the emissions in a couple of ways. One, they talked to every truck, much like you were saying about uphill and everything. Every truck had a problem. Well, talking to a technician about what trucks are working, which they see them, but they only see the broken ones. I never take my truck to the shop to ask them why it's running too good.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
and a quote from a friend of mine was, asking a technician about a new truck is like asking a divorce attorney whether marriage counseling works or not.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I had that experience when the first time I really screwed up my business and got into all kinds of debt and had to try to figure out my way out. And I, would consult with attorneys. And according to them, bankruptcy was my only option. But that's not true. It wasn't my only option. I figured another way out of it. But for them, they were adamant. No, this is what bankruptcy laws are for. This is for you. We're going to help you. I'm like, this just doesn't feel right. I borrowed this money. I should pay it back.
yeah.
That's right.
And,
So be careful
can I
when you talk to technicians on the advice side of it. Not that they're not right, but they're right from their field of view.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I've run into two. There's the old technician, maybe that's a general statement. There's the technician that hates all emissions and they're all crap. And then there's the technician that says, well, this is what we got to deal with. This is why this happens. If you watch this, you should be okay.
That's right.
So you just got to find the second one.
Hang on to that second one.
That's right.
Ask him if he wants free tickets to the concert coming up. So
Exactly.
And can I make a comment about Southwest Airlines? You guys have talked about it a couple times this week.
Yes, absolutely.
I took aviation in college, and I read a book by one of the CEOs of Southwest. His name is Howard Putnam. And he was the CEO in the late 60s, early 70s. And I think the reason why they were so successful is that they didn't have 8 layers of middle management. He had to do first thing they had to do was do an engine study. And he said he used to work for United, I think, and United would send his engine, here's the plans, and it had to be rubber stamped by like 9 different managers and departments. By the time it made it through all the paperwork, the engine technology had already changed, and they had to start all over again. So it would take 8 to 10 years to figure out what engine that they wanted. Howard called a guy that he knew about engines. He goes, hey, I'm with Southwest. We need an engine study. How much did you charge me for it? And the guy goes, oh, I don't know, $100,000, and I fly for free on your airline for 2 years. He goes, done. When can you have it done? He goes, oh, about 4 months. And that's what they did. He said, we had our orders in and had the engines installed within a year and a half.
Here's another big one for Southwest, and I'm not sure why the industry didn't adjust to this and change their model. Look at an airline like all of the kind of legacy airlines, Delta, United, those kinds, that the ones that are left, they have everything from tiny little prop planes all the way up to 747s and a whole bunch of different models in between. How many different types of planes does Southwest fly?
One.
Usually one. Right.
Yeah.
One plane. That's it. Not 7. So now you go back to that. It took us 8 years to figure out an engine. That's on one model. If Delta's trying to do that, how do they optimize all those different planes they're trying to fly? They don't. Here's what I think should have happened in the airline industry. So Southwest says, look, we're going to fly 737s. No first class. Every seat is basically the same other than the exit aisles. And that's the only plane we're going to fly. So we can't do long routes over to China because that's usually jumbo jets. We're not going to do, well, they actually do some pretty short hop stuff. They just do it with their 737s. But they're not doing the little puddle jumpers to get, 18 people to the next airport like a lot of these other airlines are doing. That one difference, in my opinion, was a big part of why Southwest was so successful. They were able to really control cost by only flying one plane. We should have had little airlines that all they do is puddle jumpers. We should have had airlines that all they do are jumbo jets. I think that model would have made much more sense.
Don't they sort of kind of do that, though? Because a lot of them puddle jumpers, they're under the other name, but it's owned by a different operation.
Down at the very bottom, you're right. A lot of the little short haul stuff is contracted out to companies that specialize in the little short haul. You're right. But you still see Delta and United own a bunch of different plane sizes. And it is a maintenance and cost nightmare.
And brands.
You're right. You're right. They don't even necessarily have the same engines or the same brand of airplane. Yeah. And part of that is because it's not available. The companies that make 747s don't necessarily make good commercial jets in those smaller. They're whole different companies sometimes. So now you've got it's like trying to run a fleet of trucks and having 30 Volvos and, 27 Freightliners and 6 Internationals and 3 Peterbilts and 10 Kenworths. That is a really bad idea.
Well, Kevin, when you were talking about them airplanes, and I know from Ohio you're familiar with snowmobiles, all the time when I was flying on one of them puddle jumpers that was a Bombardier, I'm like, I'm flying on a Skidoo.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what it was. Bombardier's big into aviation. And you're right. They make snowmobiles and ATVs and watercraft and Yeah,
on the aviation side of it, they're still, all the routes and where they can go is still fairly regulated, kind of like trucking was before 1980.
Yeah.
You had to get a special permission to be doing out of country routes. So Southwest stayed away from that and just concentrated on these routes that we can do efficiently.
And that they just became very, very efficient. And because they were so efficient, then they were able to pay their employees better and give them better benefits. And they got incredible employee, loyalty. And
their pilots have an incredible sense of humor on their announcements.
not their pilots, the flight attendants. When I lived in Orlando, living in Orlando is a lousy place to live if you do a lot of business travel. Only for one reason, though. Actually, I love the airport in Orlando. Where I lived, it was an easy trip into the airport with no traffic. The biggest downside is that you're in Disney. Everybody on the plane is going to Disney. It's a bunch of amateur travelers with kids, and it's just a mess. I mean, that's just part of flying in and out of Orlando. But there was I did several regular flights. I used to fly to Nashville every month. I used to fly to Dallas every month. And you get the same cruise. I would be booking the same flight every month. So you get the same cruise almost, pretty regular. There was one of the flight attendants, a woman on, I think it might, if I remember, it was the Nashville flight. And her whole announcement, she would sing it. And she had created her own lyrics and song, and she was incredible. She had just an amazing voice, and she would sing her announcements. There was another one on another flight I used to do a lot, and she had the most hilarious comedy routine. Her entire spiel on the safety was just one long stand-up routine, and she was hilarious.
Yeah, people liked their jobs back then. I'm guessing we got too many Karens in the HR, or they got too many middle managers now.
Well, it wasn't so much back then, because I would have the exact opposite experience when I would fly on the legacy carriers. United, Delta, the employees are pissed off. Everything's a problem. There's tension. It just was not enjoyable to fly with them.
Yeah, you're thankful the pilot didn't leave the intercom on when he's talking to the co-pilot after the announcement.
Exactly. It was just a very, very different experience.
But yeah, I haven't flown for a while. So can't comment lately on Southwest. So.
I can't either since the airline industry kind of fell apart, and honestly, I'm shocked at what happened to Southwest. I honestly think that they've been targeted somehow. I know it's a black helicopter theory, but I've just never seen a company go downhill so fast. A company that had been so good for so many decades.
Well, one of the last flights that I took a couple flights ago left me a little bit uneasy. I was waiting for my bag outside the door there, and the pilot that was taking the plane was talking to the pilot that brought the plane in. And in front of us, he was discussing all the problems the plane had. And I'm like, I really did not need to know that.
Exactly. Hey, Brad, I'm going to cut you loose. I just looked at the clock, and I got to get through some calls here. Let's go to Oklahoma. Paul, welcome.
Howdy. I tuned in late today, so I missed the first half hour. But a good-sized company in New Zealand, but it would be considered a small company over here. They just retired last week. They just retired 6 of their trucks. They were Ford cab-overs, V8. Some were naturally aspirated, and some were turbocharged.
Really?
320 and 300. Yeah, 320 and 360 horsepower.
What?
They just retired them from 38 years of continuous service.
Wow. That's my question was going to be 300 some horse V8 naturally aspirated. What the hell kind of engine are we talking about here?
Oh, no, it's probably something Ford built.
Interesting. Yeah.
They must have paid for the extended warranty when they got the
Yeah, must have.
Yeah. Interesting. Holy cow.
But I remember those kind of trucks when I was a kid. They're just like, wow, look at this. The big V8, 360 horsepower, turbocharged. Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you grew up as a gearhead, looking at cars, you wanted a V8, a small block, a big block, whatever it might be, but you wanted a V8. The last thing in the world you wanted in your car was a straight six, right? Come on.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted a straight six. That's your grandfather's car. We wanted a V8. Even when they switched to V6, it was like, V6, are you kidding me? Give me back my 2 cylinders. What the hell am I going to do with a V6? You can do a lot with them, but we got into this mindset that V8s, that's the kind of but not with a diesel. V configurations don't do that well with diesels. A straight six really is a good setup.
And Kevin, you had that a little bit wrong because your grandfather's car had a V8, but it only had a 2-barrel. That was grandmom's car that had the 6-cylinder.
There you go. You're right. You're right.
The 1 6-cylinder car in New Zealand New Zealand and Australia that was very popular. It was a Chrysler product. Was a Valiant Charger, 2-door, and that had a Hemi 265. But you could get them with a triple carburetors from the factory.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, and they were a bulletproof engine. You just chuck a brick on the accelerator and go have fun, and just hang on all day long, all night, just bulletproof.
There you go.
But screaming.
Oh, I'll bet.
And then another really popular truck that has lasted a long time in New Zealand is the Mack Cruise Liner and Ultraliner, and so a lot of those trucks are in the 30+ years old.
Wow.
And they're still trucking every day of the week down there. So,
well, we were talking about airlines.
That's about a 16-liter V8, I think.
Yeah, airlines, 25 and 30-year-old planes was average. I mean, that's not considered unusual in the airlines. In the Air Force, I remember reading this a decade or so ago, the B-2 bombers? B-52 bombers, right. They were coming up on 75 years old, and the Air Force decided to keep them for 25 more years. I thought that's crazy, but they just keep rebuilding them.
I never figured out why in the trucking industry, especially with as good as cabs and everything else has become, why the truck industry hasn't gone where there's a factory where the truck goes back and gets updated and refitted, much like they do the airline industry.
Exactly.
Because most of the truck does not need thrown away.
No, it doesn't. And it would be far more cost effective to rebuild them.
And it'd be green.
My guess is, you know what my guess is why we never even attempted to go down that road?
Trucking manufacturers want to sell more trucks.
No, neither one of those answers.
No.
Who do, and drivers don't think this, but who do we cater to in the industry when it comes to equipment? The driver. We have a huge turnover and a driver shortage problem. However you believe that whole thing, that drove the idea that no, we're not going to rebuild old trucks because drivers still look at them as old trucks. Drivers want new trucks, and we're just going to go buy new trucks.
Yeah, if it was done in a factory atmosphere.
Oh, I'm not saying it wouldn't be
a new truck.
I'm not saying it wouldn't be as good as a new truck. I think it would be. It's driver perception. To them, no, that's a 2017 model. I want a 2024.
Yeah. Well, last Saturday. Go ahead, Henry.
Yeah, when they take one of those Boeing airplanes in and they retrofit it, it's essentially a new plane again. The airframe's old, but
and I agree with you. It's just perception is all it is. The pilots don't have a choice, and they don't have a huge turnover problem in pilots, so they can do that. And pilots are just fine with it. Drivers, nope. You would see the fleet that tried this would start losing drivers to the fleet that just went and bought a bunch of new trucks. All right, let's grab one more call, and then we're going to roll on over to Twitter. Warren, welcome.
Hey, Kevin, how are you today? Good to
Good to get a hold of you.
Good. You're in my old neck of the woods there in Canton.
Yeah. I can't remember. Were you from Stowe? Was that your old stomping grounds or
Streetsboro.
Streetsboro? I'm sorry, Streetsboro. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've got
for a while.
go ahead.
I covered the P&D route. The terminal was in Richfield, and my route could be anywhere from Canton over to Worcester, all along 30 down there. I would hit Kidron and what's little town Smuckers is in. I used to go to Smuckers all the time. I can't. Rittman? No, Smuckers wasn't in Rittman. Or
no, Rittman's up a little north of that.
It's more closer up to Medina. It's right there.
Trying to think. It's south of Canton. It's near. I've got a dedicated account I just picked up in Apple Creek, Ohio, south of Canton, and Smuckers is down there somewhere.
Well, that's one plant.
I can't think of it.
Yeah, I know where you're talking about. I love Apple Creek. This is one of my favorite little towns. I almost forgot about that place. The main Smuckers plant it's closer to Worcester, off of 30, just a little north of 30. Actually, I just can't remember the name of the town right now. That whole area, also, you're familiar, is very Amish. I mean, I spent most of my day. That is a huge Amish area all through there.
Well, that's kind of the reason for my call. I've got this next week. I will celebrate my fourth month anniversary as an owner operator or trucking company, however you want to describe me. The company is me, my 2004 Freightliner Century, and my trailer. So I ended up through a broker picking up some work for an Amish, as we were just talking about, an Amish-owned pallet company in Apple Creek. And it's funny how I ended up with this work. You know, your dedicated work, getting an actual direct shipper relationship, I know is kind of the holy grail of trucking. And I was kind of him-hawing about, I'm just trying to keep my head above water right now. And I kept telling myself, well, I got to be making calls and I got to be trying to, network and talk to people and, I need a, dedicated shipper. Well, one day I pull into the pallet company I've done about 6 loads for through Uber Freight, and the forklift operator comes up to the window of the truck and says, "Hey, the owner's been looking for you." And I'm like, he has? And he said, yeah. He said, we got a dedicated run with our trailers that goes up to about 5 or 6 different locations in Chicago or Michigan. It's like 1 to 2 trips per week, but we got a local guy that does it, but he runs day cabs, and his drivers, they don't want to stay the night in Chicago. It's just a little bit too far for them, and they haven't been reliable. And so they've been trying to get a hold of you. So I guess number one, I should have put the phone number on the truck, but. So I said, "Oh, I'd love to talk to him." And he said, "Well, he's here now." So I go in, and so I guess, long story short, I end up with this, like I said, once to twice a week dedicated run to Chicago. I haul their trailer. I get a great rate to go out there. It covers, basically, if I couldn't get a backload, it gives me over $2 a mile, even if I had to run back empty. But I'm running generally to Chicago or up to Michigan. I can always find a backload back. They're real reasonable about the trailer. I can get it back in a day or two. Okay, so this has been going well, but it's like I said, I've only been in business 4 months, and I'll just share briefly. My plan was I'd like to build a small fleet. But in terms of my planning, I wasn't even going to consider adding a second trucker driver for at least 18 months. I wanted to do this, about a year and a half, and
that's a good number.
And learn Oh, okay. So, but yesterday I got approached by the owner.
Let me clarify too. 18 months is a good number. You got plenty of time to learn. And it sounds like this might be happening, if there was some opportunity that popped up, I wouldn't just say, oh, yeah, you should go for that opportunity. But we could sit down and look at some numbers and look at what you're doing and talk this through. And it's not out of the question to add a truck sooner than that.
Okay. So yesterday, I'm in their office with dealing with some invoicing, and the owner comes out, and they have a new customer in Cincinnati, and they're asking me if I'd be interested in. I think they like me because I didn't come from the trucking industry. I think I'm communicating better than the people they were working with before, and
probably
handling it maybe a little more professionally. Yeah. So they tell me they've got a 5-day-a-week run. So every day, basically, you'd go from Apple Creek to Cincinnati and back. This is going to be a long-term customer. They deal with a national pallet company. They've been in business a long time. I'm not at all worried about, them. I have found that dealing with the Amish, they are very business savvy. I mean, they're tough negotiators.
Yeah.
But in terms of getting paid, in terms of, worrying about getting screwed over, I don't worry about that much with these folks. I think that, I can rely on the information they're giving me. So I have an opportunity to pick up, as a single owner operator operation. I mean, this would be the holy grail to have a basically day job. This would be an 8 or 9 hour day. I'm literally taking a preloaded trailer to Cincinnati, taking an empty back, and doing it again the next day.
Let me cut to the chase here.
But I'd have to.
Oh, go ahead.
I'd have to give up my my other run.
No, you wouldn't.
And well, that's the thing. It dawned on me that I could do this with a day cab and hire somebody to do it.
I wouldn't buy a day cab. Let me help you with that. It's not worth it.
All right.
Day cabs are more expensive. They hold their price better. It's supply and demand. There aren't a lot of day cabs on the market, so they're always overpriced, in my opinion. They're less fuel efficient.
Okay.
I used to think, boy, I could build a really fuel efficient day cab. It's lighter. It doesn't work. The aerodynamics are a problem. We actually get better fuel economy with a full-blown sleeper with all the fairings. It smooths out the airflow. You just can't do that with a day cab. So there's no good reason to buy a day cab. Get a good sleeper.
You can't even get your trailer gap right.
Yeah, right. Trailer gap's a problem. So, yeah, I made the mistake of going to day cabs for a couple of years, and I switched back. It was not working for me at all. And you know how I track numbers. I knew that it just wasn't making sense to buy day cabs. But what you have is the perfect operation to keep drivers with no turnover. When you can get a driver home every night and weekends and probably off holidays, that was my operation at FedEx. I had 0 turnover and I had a waiting list of drivers. So you mentioned earlier you want to build a small fleet. If you just said, look, I want to be an owner-operator, but I love the idea of being home every year, well, great, go grab this run and just do it yourself. But you said, I want to build a small fleet. Here's your opportunity. These are the kind of runs you look for if you want to build a fleet, because they're so much easier to deal with drivers.
Well, and that's what I thought. My point was, I'd love to do that, but what I'd really like to do to build the company, I'll keep a Chicago run, which I have to augment with spot market runs. But there's potential growth on that too.
Correct.
But that's what I was thinking was my opportunity to hire a driver and keep them and find somebody that's good and conscientious.
Now, let me ask you
this is the run. I mean, this is the one.
Because, again, I mentioned earlier, this is nuanced. I can easily say, given this choice, I would grab that contract in a heartbeat and I'd be out buying a truck and hiring a driver. But there is another factor here. What is your risk tolerance?
It's pretty high, Kevin, but
Good.
my problem is it's pretty high, but I just got through a $12,000 repair and I'm good. I had enough money to cover everything and all that, but I'm not, my cash reserve is not where I want it to be. And I have a high risk tolerance, but I'm pretty nervous about doing this without being,
and I'm glad you are. So let me explain what this is. And let me also explain this. Just 3 months ago, if you would have called me, I would have said, sorry, either take this as your own run or just pass it right now. It wasn't the time. Okay. Trucks were too expensive. We couldn't really see where the bottom was. I kind of feel like I can see the bottom now. Trucks are coming way down. So it's not a slam dunk, but if you are willing to take some risk, there's more risk here. This could be an awesome opportunity. And we can minimize risk by really crunching the numbers, really shopping hard for that bargain of a truck. But this is a risky move this early in your business. This is one of those that I say, this all comes down to risk tolerance. You know, the no balls, no blue chips sometimes. You know, that's how it goes. The more risk we're willing to take, the bigger the reward we could potentially get. But the opposite of that is the bigger crash we could sustain as well. So really, when I get somebody that calls me and I can just hear in their voice they're nervous and scared about everything, my answer would be, don't even think about doing this. I'm not hearing that from you. It sounds to me like you've got some experience other than trucking that would help in this, that you're thinking it through, that you understand it's a risk, and you're kind of looking for some assurance. And I'll give it to you. If you've got some risk tolerance, this could be a great opportunity. And we could set this up so even if it fails, it won't put you out of business.
Right.
You still are doing your thing and you have revenue. That will keep the business going. All we have to do is just be careful that you don't if this starts to go south, you've got to be on top of it, and we can't let it get too far into the weeds where it could take down you as well. And that's not hard. We could plan this and set some guidelines and say, you know, if this happens, we just have to dump the truck before it takes us down completely. So there is risk here, but if you do it right, we could really minimize a lot of the risk.
Okay, and speaking of risk, I am perfectly happy in my 2004 Freightliner with my Detroit Diesel 60 series. That's perfect. My operating cost is $1.51 a mile all in. I pay myself, I pay fuel, I pay all the fixed costs. I'm good. But on this run, if I would consider buying another truck to give them this new great work here, and I keep my route, am I going to be able to repeat my model and buy one of these old trucks like I drive, or I'm going to have to?
I would.
That's what I want to do.
Yes, I would be buying a 25.
Can I find a driver to drive it?
Here's the thing. Yes, you can find a driver to drive it. You have to work a little harder. And when I used to do this, and I ran ads, if any time during the phone call or the interview, the driver talked about newer trucks or even asked about the trucks, they got eliminated. Really. You're done. Next. If the truck is any concern at all, and I would make it clear to people, I run really safe, clean, dependable equipment. That's what I would say. Wouldn't talk about years, models, engines, horsepower, nothing. I run clean, dependable, safe equipment. If you need to know anything other than that, move on and go find another job.
Right. Because I'm really, this has worked well for me. I'm really happy with this Detroit diesel, and there's nothing. I'd prefer to buy something with the same thing in it, or a Cummins N14, something like that.
Warren, let's do this. Take some time. Think about this. I think I know what you're going to do, and I think you're right. I think you are a good candidate for this. Start looking for some trucks, and just plan on calling me once a week, and we'll go through this.
Okay, great. Appreciate it. Thank you for what you do. Help us out a lot out here.
You're welcome. I'll look forward to it. I love stuff like that. All right, Henry, you ready to switch over to Twitter?
Yes.
Let's do it.
I'll
I'm actually
do it.
late, so we'll
Give me a moment.
Yeah, we'll probably
Yeah.
be starting about
What I was
5
thinking.
minutes late or so, but we'll be all right. All right, see you in a little bit.
Very good.
We'll see you over on
See you
Twitter.
there.
If you're
Yep.
listening on the app, you can just keep listening like you are. If you want to take me up on my offer, you got to be on Twitter itself. First person that jumps in and says, I don't know what I'm doing, I need help, I'm willing to help. We'll see you in a little bit. Be safe, be profitable, be fit and healthy. Always do the hard work and master the journey.